My name's Nicole Marshall. I'm 28 and I'm on a hotel ballroom stage at an industry awards dinner. The host just called me the surprise keynote and announced my $8 million book deal like it's a new kind of weather. Cameras click, someone laughs too loud, the AC breathes cold down my neck. Mom chokes on her wine at table 1. Dad lowers his phone, stunned, and then, because he always records everything, starts filming as if proof will turn this into his story. I don't look at them, I steady my breath, feel the mic warm under my palm, and begin. Right now, everyone thinks applause means the past is tidy. They're wrong. This exact moment is the place where private things get public, and that's where I start telling the truth. Before I tell you how I made the people who threw my novels in the trash swallow their pride, tell me where you're listening from. Drop it in the comments, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The week before the storm felt ordinary in a way that almost made me grateful. I wake up in a small one-bedroom above a bodega, a walk-up with a drafty window and a desk that faces a brick wall. The window frame whines in wind, the radiator hisses like an old friend. My peace is built, not bought. Mornings are coffee in a chipped mug, 5 minutes of stretching and hitting a word count target I tape above my desk. I track progress with sticky notes stuck in a neat row, not apps, not timers. The little square of paper tells me where I left the story and where I'll go next. Maya Brooks, my agent, calls every day at 10. It's never more than 5 minutes and it's always clear and kind. She saves the tough conversations for email so I can read them without someone else's breath in my ear. Nora Patel, my editor, gives me 3 sharp notes at a time. She won't rewrite a line for me, she'll hand back a clean problem so I can fix it. Sophie Reed, my publicist, runs a calendar coded in color, teasers, announcement, feature, interview. She keeps saying we go slow to go big. I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb except for those 3. Anyone else waits until after pages are done. I'm stable. I'm paying my own rent. Still, a sound makes me flinch sometimes, glass clinking at a party, a trash can lid snapping, and my stomach drops back to the kitchen where the worst thing happened. I keep a sealed envelope taped to the underside of my desk with my first draft inside. It sits there like proof that I could do this without permission, that I didn't need someone else's signature to be my author. When I touch that envelope, I remember nights of typing by the bathroom fan and afternoons at the bookstore listening to strangers talk about their lives, and I feel my center come back. Home was a place where money came with strings. Mom paid for my classes and weekend retreats and then, with a smile, edited my pages as if she were fixing a report. Her red pen moved across my work with the certainty of someone who believed kindness came with corrections. Suggestions arrived as orders: change the voice here, make the main character nicer there. Dad paid the bills and then kept a running list of favors, rent, tutors, workshops, like receipts he expected me to sign with gratitude. The dinner table turned into a boardroom where updates were status reports and praise was doled out only when I aligned with their plan. When I asked for help, it came wrapped in expectations. We invested in you, they'd remind me, as if a bank had an opinion on my paragraphs. They handed me dedications already written to our daughter who made this possible. I was supposed to sign it like a receipt and feel grateful. I learned to smile when cameras were around and to bite down on a small, private anger at night. In public, I clapped at other people's launches and nodded when they praised Mom's eye for talent. In private, I edited my own life back into place. They called it family support. I called it a leash. I became a writer in the gaps and the quiet. I wrote in the bathroom with the fan on so they couldn't hear my keys and start a line of questioning. I worked weekend shifts at a used bookstore for something they couldn't buy me: proximity to readers. I listened to people recommend books and watched how their faces changed with language. Henry Cole, a veteran author, found me at a workshop because he liked the margin notes I made in other people's pages. He asked for 10 pages and said he would be honest. I mailed him 12 trembling pages and got them back with one sentence circled in thick black ink: "This is your spine, don't let anyone replace it." Henry's note felt like oxygen. With his encouragement, I started sending queries. Maya answered with, "I'm interested," and added, "I'll protect the quiet you write in." That promise was gold. I began to spend my limited cash on a cheap room at a first draft camp and learned small luxuries. That you can buy a night without interruption and that a night of uninterrupted typing changes things. I told Mom I was busy without telling her where. I paid my rent before Dad could, and his tone shifted the first time I told him a bill was handled without his wire. The floor under me felt like it was tilting, but then it held. The day the pages hit the trash is a small, sharp memory I can still taste. I had printed a stack of chapters and left them on the kitchen counter, folded in my habit of sharing progress with them as a peace offering. Mom walked in humming something from the radio, picked up the papers like they were a folded napkin, and dropped them into the bin as if she were clearing crumbs. "Nobody wants this drivel," she said, and kept scrubbing the stove under her hand. Her tone wasn't loud, her calm made it worse. Dad stood in the doorway with his arms crossed like he was the judge of everything in the house. "We're done funding your fantasies," he announced like he was closing an account. They gave me an ultimatum in the language they knew best: live within the rules they set or live without their money. I remember a kind of slow, hot panic that makes your mouth dry and your hands fumble. I packed one suitcase that night: my laptop, a sweater, a photo of Rachel when we were small, and a flash drive Henry told me to keep on my person. I didn't leave a note on the kitchen table. I didn't argue. I wrote a short text to Rachel: "I'll be fine, don't call." I meant it, and I didn't call. I left before dawn on a bus while the city still smelled like rain on pavement. Mom didn't text back. Dad sent a budgeting spreadsheet with a link and a note about responsibility. Rachel sent 3 heart emojis and a "be safe." I rented a tiny room with a leaky sink and a wobbly table and set my laptop on it like a stake in the ground. The quiet I bought with the last of my bookstore checks felt like breathing again. For the first time, my sentences belonged to me alone. Henry rings one night with his old, steady voice: "Your work's ready. Are you ready?" He's not asking about the pages. He's asking about me. The writing is humbling me into a better person, making me less eager to hide and more eager to be honest. I pull my phone from the dresser and, on a reckless impulse, switch my wallpaper to a screenshot of the cleanest page I own, chapter 1, after I stripped every extra adjective. Seeing it first thing in the morning is like seeing a little knot I made that I can now untie. I sleep badly for 2 nights, the kind of sleep where you remember the meeting that changed everything but only in flashes. My hands go to my pocket on repeat to check for a call that doesn't come. I set a sticky note above my desk that says, "Control the room by controlling yourself," and I mean it both for the speech I might give and for not letting them write me into their story again. The more ordinary parts of my life stay steady enough to be almost comforting. I make coffee the same way I always do, letting the kettle whistle twice before I pour. I stretch for 5 minutes, touch down to my toes, and take a breath in a slow way that feels like setting down a heavy bag. But under all of it, there's a current of adrenaline that both hums and sharpens. Something could happen, and if it does, we won't be talking about books alone. We've come too far to let the moment be hijacked by a family table. Then Nora calls. Her voice is breathy and low and doesn't have any of the office polish she's famous for. "We want to announce your deal at that dinner," she says. My mouth forgets how to form a normal word for a second. The publisher doesn't want a press release 2 days later. They want the room, that particular audience, the editors and buyers and columnists and the people who buy first print runs, to hear the number and see who stands behind it. They want a surprise keynote, Nora says. It'll change the timeline. The figure she says out loud is almost obscene: 8 million. Somehow that number is both a shield and a weapon. It's loud enough to drown out old whispers about who paid for what, and it has a way of changing the way people look at you when they think someone else's bank account paid for your breath. Her words sketch the battleground without emotion. The dinner is run by Mom's circle. Table 1 is the family table that photographs like an altar. The keynote is unlisted. Jason explains by phone later how it would work. A green room away from the main flow, a timed cue, 3 beats between the host's closing line and my entry, mic check, photographer ready. Sophie is calm in that way she is when she doesn't want anyone else to start panicking. We can do this on our terms, she tells me, or we can let them do it on theirs. The choice is given like a clear path. Let the room make the story into a family soap or make it a statement about authorship and boundaries. I listen to their practical plans and feel cold and electric at the same time. We shrink the circle down to just the people who need to know. Maya's steady voice is a calm presence on the calls. Nora's practical focus keeps us editing toward a speech that has teeth but not venom. Sophie drafts a timeline that leaves no space for leaks. Jason is in the loop because he's the engine that can make a surprise land like a drop. The publisher keeps the plan tight, no mass emails, no exclusive hints, nothing that can be screenshot and sent into the void. We decide on a 7-minute window on stage, no slides, no teleprompter, just my voice and a handful of notes. That feels right. 7 minutes is enough to change the picture and not so long that it feels like I'm taking space that belongs to someone else. Jason tells me where Mom will be seated, table 1, of course, and says Dad will probably be filming, phone up like it's a crucible that will prove the moment was theirs to make. A handler will meet me at a side entrance with a clipboard that has my alias on it. Security will have a separate escort so I won't have to walk through a lobby of lenses. We agree on the intro. The host will call me a debut novelist with a record deal without naming me until the light hits my face. The mechanics feel almost surgical and the plan gives me a strange calm. If something goes wrong, we have a backup door and a car waiting 2 blocks away. If someone tries to make it into a family story, we have the stage and my words. I start to imagine the costs in private and they're not all about money. I picture Rachel at the family table because she still lives at home because she's learned to shrink into a role that keeps the house calm. I see her smaller than she is, chest caving a little when Mom laughs at a joke that hits too close to home. If I speak in a room full of people who know my family, the blowback will not only be emails and texts. It will be a pressure on Rachel to choose sides at school and at home, to explain herself to cousins, to be the thin bridge between a public me and the private us. I picture Dad framing the whole thing afterward. We made her as if my name were a product they could stamp with their logo. He'll hold up the phone footage and point to wire transfers like receipts and remind people we invested. I think of that kitchen, the trash bin, the way Mom held my pages like they were garbage. If I walk onto that stage and am quiet, that moment becomes their definition of me again. Someone whose work could be dismissed by someone's hand. If I hide, they still win. If I go out and make the night a clean, private announcement, no spectacle about family, no revenge in my lines, then the story shifts from ownership to authorship. Henry's voice is a flat, true thing in my head. Silence is also a statement. Choose the one that sets you free. I weigh the options like coins in my palm. Anonymous success that lets them keep the narrative in their mouths, or a precise, bounded truth that refuses to drag anyone through mud. In the end, I decide that telling the truth without naming names is the cleanest cut. I don't want to weaponize memory, I want to set a line. I tell Sophie we do it our way and she answers, then we'll protect the rest. That decision feels like stepping over a threshold I told myself I'd never cross. There's a cost, and I can see it. Eyes turned toward my family, a ripple through our private life, maybe a hard week or 2. But there's also a gain I hadn't expected. A sense of untying a cord. If they want to count receipts, they can. I want them to count hours instead. The hours I sat in a leaky room, the hours I read my pages aloud to my plants, the hours I spent listening to readers at a used bookstore. Those hours are mine. I tuck an index card into my pocket with the first line of the speech written on it and feel my hands stop shaking. I buy a plain black dress with pockets the way a soldier chooses boots. The dress fits like a plan, simple, functional, with room to breathe. I slip an index card into one pocket with the first line of my speech written in my own hand, so if everything goes sideways, I can still find my voice. Maya sends the media schedule for the day after. We agree to tell the story on our terms, not the night of the event when people are leaning over dessert. Sophie emails a list of do's and don'ts. No social media spats, no late-night shows, one long interview scheduled for next week where I can tell the narrative without being ambushed. I sleep with the index card under my pillow because old superstitions are oddly calming when stakes are new. Henry's text that night, just 3 words, "Keep your spine," is a small, glowing thing I tuck into my brain. The clock becomes a soft drum in the week before the dinner. Each day tightens around the timeline like thread on a spool. I rehearse with a metronome app so my cadence won't be knocked by gasps or applause. I practice with a small mic pack that Sophie insists won't snag my dress. Jason gives me a code name for check-in and I practice saying it without laughing. Sophie creates a decoy calendar entry to confuse anyone snooping in shared family inboxes. An entry for an imaginary editor call at the exact hour I'm due to leave. I tell one neighbor, Liv, who waters my plants when I'm gone, to keep an eye on my building and not to answer the door if someone looks official. I change my phone lock code and turn off read receipts. Each small move feels like weatherproofing. We test the chain of command. Priya meets me 3 times at the venue beforehand, walking me through the green room with the kind of detail that makes a stage feel less like a trap and more like a room with a door. We practice the tap and the nod. Sophie practices a line for the press. I spoke about my experience. I won't discuss my family publicly. Short, clean, exact. Nora and I pare the speech down so it doesn't tangle into accusation. We agree to begin with a simple line about the trash bin and the suitcase, the exact moments that pivoted my life, then to make a clear boundary without naming anyone. The plan is to pivot the audience to readers, not to relatives. If someone tries to turn it into a spectacle, the team will move the story out of the gossip rooms and into magazines that read slowly. Keeping the circle small feels like being allowed to breathe. Only the people who absolutely need to know are told. Maya, Nora, Sophie, Jason, Priya, Henry, and Liv form a private constellation. I don't tell Rachel yet. I'll tell her in person on a day when I can promise her a safe exit if it feels like a storm. The fewer the people with keys to the plan, the fewer the holes leaks can poke. We turn off automatic cloud syncing for my speech document and print 3 copies, hiding each in a different place. One in my pocket, one under the lining of my journal, and one tucked between the pages of a paperback in my bag. I practice walking to the stage without looking at where my parents will sit. I practice saying the word support without a tremor. Each tiny rehearsal makes me less likely to fold when the room breathes heavy. Sophie draws up a contingency that reads like a map out of a movie. Misdirect a potential leaker with a decoy calendar event. Route my arrival through a second service if the first seems compromised. Give a guard orders to escort me out the back if cameras press too close. We rehearse the night as if it's a machine that must hum, timing, pauses, places where the applause will come and where the silence will bite. I'm surprised at how comfortable I am with the logistics. Control the facts and you control what the room can say about you. For once, the plan isn't about pleasing anyone, it's about protecting a space for me to say something true. Then Aunt Marlene starts to ring. Her calls come like small storms, sudden, predictable, and full of old sugar. She leaves a voice message that begins with a laugh, the kind of laugh that's meant to smooth over anything sharp. "Sweetie, we should see each other Friday," she says, the hint of a knife disguised as a dinner invitation. "Your mother will be so happy." She asks me what I'm wearing now, as if clothing will reveal intention. She whispers the family script about forgiveness and not making scenes and how important reputation is. She mentions forgiveness like a coupon I can redeem if I perform correctly. I keep my replies thin and flat. I'm working. "I'm busy," she asks, "will you be at the event?" And then immediately adds, "It would mean so much to your mother if you showed up in the right spirit." Her voice is all loops and sentiment. I can hear the aunts and cousins sizing up a performance in the background. I imagine her at the dinner, smiling the way she always does when someone else is on a leash. After I hang up, I add one line to my speech that is all the answer she expects me to avoid. Love is not ownership, it's small and tidy and not a roast. It's the sentence that quiets my hands when they want to strike back. I know Marlene will interpret anything less direct as weakness and anything more direct as a threat. The choice to write that line instead of yelling it at her is deliberate. My aim is not to burn bridges for effect, it's to make a bridge that doesn't demand tolls. The pressure from Aunt Marlene is a first ripple. The second is my father taking to a local online forum the way some people take to church on Sundays, full of moral certainty and an audience. He posts about creative hobbies needing discipline and real investment, a comment that circles like a dog and snaps at my heels without naming me. Old family friends click like and share as if it's an editorial. The subtext is clear: if you're talented, you should be grateful to the people who paid for you. Rachel texts me from home, Dad posted something weird. Her message is 3 words with a period at the end. It's getting loud. I'm tempted to answer on the forum, to write a long paragraph about how support that controls isn't support. Sophie hears the danger in my breath and says, "Don't feed their script." So I mute the thread and make myself a tea. Instead of replying, I add to my speech a paragraph about investment that expects obedience versus support that expects growth. I practice saying support that expects growth aloud until it becomes a physical thing I can put on the stage like a placard. I choose not to screenshot Dad's post even though part of me wants proof. Proof would be a comfort. It would also be evidence for an argument I don't want to make in public. The point is not to win an argument with a post but to shift the room's sense of who I am. Aunt Marlene's calls keep coming. Dad's posts become a slow, public nudge. The house I left months ago still throws shadows into my inbox even now. Each small public shove makes the decision to walk into that ballroom feel more like stepping into a current with teeth. But the work I've done, the nights, the cheap room, the hours cataloged on sticky notes, begs for a place to stand that isn't their dinner table. I keep the circle small, the plan tight, and the speech sharp. If the world wants to watch, they'll see a woman standing up, not a puppet finally cut loose. We make a plan with the practical tenderness of 2 women who have done a covert operation with pizza boxes and cheap suitcases. If things go bad at the table, she texts me one emoji for safe and another for get me. I give her the address of a cafe 2 blocks away and preload a gift card with a name she knows. I tell her about the spare room I keep for deadlines and heartbreaks, the one that has an old lamp and a blanket with a hole in it that still smells like my mother's house but feels neutral enough to sleep in. She cries, then laughs in the same breath and says, "Okay, I'm coming." She says she doesn't want a speech replayed at home over burnt coffee, she wants safety. I promise her the bed and a bagel in the morning. We talk about small things, what time I'll pick her up if she needs it, which side of the car has the easier lock to work with. Planning like this makes me feel less alone and gives her a way out that's not dramatic. When we hang up, I fold my hands into my lap and practice saying, "I've got you," until it stops sounding like an announcement and starts sounding like a fact. The speech starts to take on teeth the way an animal shapes a jaw for a bite. What began as a quiet, honest telling grows into something with an edge because the world outside keeps flexing at us. I cut the soft opener that once felt polite and replace it with the trash bin moment, naked and simple. I add a line, "Support without control is love, anything else is a leash." It's not a joke, it's not a plea, it's a boundary. I rewrite the middle to remove any hint of a subtweet or a clever aside. This isn't about scoring points, it's about drawing a line that anyone who listens can repeat if they need it. I also scribble a tiny private sentence meant only for Rachel. Some of us were raised to fold, we can learn to unfold. I don't plan to say her name. I fold that line into the rhythm of the speech like a small warmth to hold. Jason warns me the room will gasp. He tells me not to pause waiting for them to decide if they're with me. "Keep talking," he says on the phone, practical and calm. Nora tells me to trust the work, that the book will stand easier if the speech holds a single steady idea. I practice pausing only at the period, not at people's faces. I cut anything that sounds like a roast. I won't weaponize memory. I rehearse it until the sentences feel like steps. I practice walking to the podium, touching the mic stand in precisely the same place each time. I test a hand gesture to call attention back to the words when people try to drag the night into gossip. Then the internet does what it does best. A blind item pops up on a gossip blog about a mystery keynote at a gala with family drama roots. The comment section plays a game of guesses. 3 other authors get named before someone suggests could be her. My stomach drops in a way that feels physical, as if someone handed me an unexpected cup of cold water. Sophie flags it and gets in touch with the blog to ask them to clean up speculative language. They update it with vaguer wording, damage limited but not gone. The leak makes me feel like the room is moving a hair earlier than I thought it would. I take a walk around the block to try to shake the clatter in my head. The winter air snaps at my face and gives me something to focus on. The city smells like a mix of frying food and exhaust and the cold, sweet scent of someone's candle. I breathe in a count of 4 and out a count of 6 until my shoulders stop mimicking a person about to do a fight. We swap car services and switch routes. Sophie moves my arrival from the main doors to a side entrance that looks like a supplier's door. Jason adds a backup door in case paparazzi sniff around. I practice a no comment, please enjoy the program smile in a mirror until the muscles forget to twitch with anger. All of these moves are small and practical, and that makes them comforting. I'm not making a scene, I'm making a plan. The program shifts next, like someone scratching their name from a list and putting another in its place to make a point. Mom rearranges the schedule to spotlight a rising editor she wants to elevate. It's a flex, a way to keep the narrative under her hand. The change means my slot moves closer to dessert when everyone's alert again. It's a higher impact moment, but also higher risk. Jason texts me, your slot stays. She doesn't know. The change makes the room more dangerous and more electric at once. I rewrite my final line to be short and quotable without being cruel, the kind of sentence that lands and holds. Nora reminds me gently but firmly that the book comes first. My words in that book need protecting. I print 3 copies of my speech and hide them in 3 different places, one in my dress pocket, one folded into a paperback in my bag, and one taped inside the lining of my journal. The rituals steady me. Each adjustment, the leak, the schedule shuffle, the tiny public flexes, raises the stakes and narrows the margin for error. Still, there is clarity in knowing where the edges are. If something goes sideways, we have backups. If the press leaks a rumor, we have a statement ready. If the room tries to make it personal, the speech will keep it about the work and the boundary. I sleep less but deeper, and when I wake I practice the first line until it doesn't feel like we're walking into an ambush but like we're walking into a room we earned. The details are small, the choices precise, and together they make me feel oddly powerful in a way that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with owning my sentences. Henry sits with me on the phone and names it plainly, less noise, more aim. He says it like a prescription, not a platitude. Maya rearranges the media plan, putting weight behind long-form reviews and reader newsletters where words live longer than headlines. Sophie breathes into the practical. She cancels a daytime TV slot that would have put me in front of hosts who thrive on conflict and instead books one deep interview for next week where I can talk about craft, not family. I feel oddly relieved. The industry can push back in small ways politely, and those small nudges can change the shape of a whole week. There are other annoyances. A small outlet runs a clickbait line about family drama, a blogger digs up an old photo of me looking unhappy at a relative's party. I resist the urge to answer every jab. My team reminds me 2 good pages beat 10 good clicks, so I go back to the book. I cut 2 paragraphs from chapter 3 with Nora honest trimming that makes the scene breathe, and in those edits I feel a kind of quiet victory. The lost placement is a hole, yes, but it turns into space to breathe, to prepare for a conversation where I control the pace. The choice to prioritize depth over volume starts to feel like my first real act of authorship. A night about a week before the dinner, I rehearse and the words vanish. I'm in my living room with the speech printed and slid across the coffee table, lamp light sharp on the paper. I start, and the sentence I know by heart evaporates into cotton. My chest tightens and the room tilts. For 4 minutes I sit on the floor and let the panic come. I sob in a way that is not cinematic, no great roar, just a hollowing sound that leaks out and feels like a physical thing leaving my body. Then I set a timer and make myself stand. The small rituals help. Wash my face until the water is cool, braid my hair because my hands like the work, and make a cup of tea that steams and smells of lemon. I shred the draft that felt too brittle and throw the pieces into a bowl on my desk, a small act opposite to the bin. The shredded paper is a theater of failure I can look at without terror. I read the speech out loud to my plants and then to Liv, my neighbor, who tilts her head and says, "It sounds like you." That sentence steadies me in a way anything else hadn't. I record myself and listen back, wobble and all, and mark the parts that sound like apology. I cut them. I can't stand up there and give half a speech. I practice until the lines are steps I can climb easily. The crash teaches me something practical. I will forget lines if I'm waiting for reaction, so I change the architecture of the speech. I make it less an argument and more a map. I write a short opening that is undeniable, a clear middle that stays on the subject of support versus control, and a closing that is like a hand offered to others who don't yet have the courage to take it. I rehearse with earplugs in because they dull the imagined noise of the room and sharpen my spoken words. I practice starting again and again from the same clause until muscle memory carries me. I sleep with my index card under my pillow, and when panic visits in the dark, I repeat the card's first line until the chant pushes the dread out. There is no safe middle left. As the night approaches, options narrow like a tunnel. People keep offering softer ways, a friendlier version, or a private meeting that will clear things up. Sophie asks me outright if I want to soften the tone. I try on the softened talk and find it hangs like a mask I can't breathe through. Jason offers me a back entrance after the speech so I can leave unseen. I think about taking it. The lobby is where stories are reborn into gossip, where cameras cluster and people who think they know you nod at your back. Walking across the room, though, is part of the point. If I slip away unseen, the story keeps its rumor engine alive. If I walk across and speak, the room knows what happened firsthand. There's courage in the visibility of it. I decide I won't hide. I choose to keep walking to the stage, shoulders square, eyes down at the index card only when I need steadiness. I pick shoes I can run in as a small, private joke to myself. Mobility is reassurance. I tape Rachel's name inside my palm so I can feel it. Her presence is a warmth that steadies the words. I make a boundary with myself, no scanning the room for mom or dad. If I search for them, I'll be searching for permission. If I speak to the room, I'm speaking to the readers and to Rachel and to myself. The team tightens a few other rules: no social media exchanges, no live television ambushes. The constraint is a relief. It makes the plan simpler and the aim clearer. Then the event coordinator emails asking for my final text for teleprompter, CCing someone with an office email that rings very close to mom's network. The old muscle in me wants to hand it over to let someone else fix the sentences so they'll sound kinder to the people in my life. Instead, I reply, "I'm speaking from notes," and I send nothing. I close my document and turn off cloud sync. Only paper exists now. I practice speaking from a skeleton outline, short prompts, not scripted paragraphs, so if someone tries to pre-approve the words, they'll find only folded scraps. Jason answers my brief note with, "The keynote controls the keynote," and I feel a small, fierce relief. If something goes wrong, I want it to be because I spoke, not because someone else decided to speak for me. I lock the page on my computer and print the 3 copies we agreed upon. The ink on the paper feels weighty, like something I can hold steady in my hands. I work through the tap-nod cue with Priya again and again because the rhythm of those small things is soothing. If the microphone goes dark, if someone tries to cut the moment, I know how to carry my voice without technology. Henry taught me projection in a noisy bar, and those lessons feel oddly useful now. The point of refusing pre-approval isn't petulance. It's a refusal to let the people who wouldn't let me keep my pages be the ones to rewrite the moment I claim my life. If I let them see and approve the lines first, I'd be handing them a map back into my house. I want an exit, not another key turned in a lock, so I keep the script in paper, keep the circle small, and keep my voice my own. I don't say where the speaking will be. I avoid mentioning the event or the night. Keeping it vague is part of the plan. If people want to guess, let them guess at me, not at the family mechanics. The post locks me in publicly in a useful way. I can't cancel without a reason that looks like cowardice. But I also feel something else, a lightness, because finally there is a public line I can point to and say, this is what I'm doing and why. The teaser without a target is a kind of invitation to readers rather than a bait for relatives. I print the post and tuck it under the speech like a soft talisman. Telling Rachel first is the only real courtesy I can think to offer. She answers on the second ring, whispering like she's in a closet again, and I tell her straight away, I'm the surprise keynote. There's silence for a beat, and then she laughs, a sound that is half disbelief and half relief. You didn't tell me to avoid the cameras? She asks. I say no, I didn't want her to find out in the room. We plan a simple code, a green heart emoji for safe and a single skull emoji for get me now. We pick the skull because it's ridiculous and therefore easy to spot in the noise. I tell her where I'll be, give her the side street the handler will use, and tell her the number of the cafe 2 blocks away where I put a gift card in her name. She asks if she should come to the dinner. I tell her the truth. I don't want you in the crossfire, but I won't keep you from being proud if you want to be. She pauses and says, I'll be there. At least I can sit and know you're okay. That answer feels like a small miracle. We make a plan for after. If things go sideways, she texts me the skull and I'll meet her in 10 minutes. I promise the spare room anyway, because promises like roofs and keys are the only kind I can keep for her right now. She says, okay. Please don't make it weird for me, and I say, I won't. Her voice wobbles once and then steadies, like when someone hangs a heavy curtain to keep light out. After we hang up, I fold the phone screen down and feel a wash of gratitude that settles somewhere under my ribs. Telling her first wasn't just practical, it was the only honest place left between us. The publisher sends the approved press line and the drop time with a note that it's scheduled to go live at the applause. Nora writes, clean, simple, no family references. I read it and feel the exact soft relief I expected. Maya emails the event itinerary for the next month. Everything hinges on this reveal. There is a cost to confirming, the timeline accelerates and there's less wiggle room for second thoughts. If I walk away now, I lose credibility with a team who has protected me and a publisher who tied a lot of momentum to this moment. If I go forward, I cut an old life into pieces. The choice is practical as much as moral. The book needs a launch, my career needs a shape, and my private past needs a boundary. I sign confirmed in a small email and hit send with hands that are steady enough. We finalize the press line together in a short call. Nora asks one last question. Are you good with, I won't discuss my family publicly? I say yes. Sophie schedules a day for a controlled long interview where I can speak about craft and keep the rest of the narrative focused. Maya cancels any midday television appointments that might ask for live reconciliations. We'll protect the book, Maya says. We'll protect the readers, Nora adds, and the team sounds like a small, determined fortress. After I click confirm, I shut my laptop. There is a soft finality to it, the same kind of weight that falls when you close a door behind you and don't look back to see if it's locked. The decision is the point of no return because it moves more than me, it moves people's expectations and schedules. Final logistics feel almost boring in their smallness, and that boringness is a mercy. Priya, the stage manager, texts a list. Arrive 60 minutes before the queue, use the side door labeled vendors, go to the green room where water and a small fruit plate will be waiting. Wear flats in the green room and change into heels at the last minute if needed, touch base with security at the stage wing. I pack a small bag the night before, flats, wipes, a charger, water, a snack bar, an extra index card. I tuck a tiny emergency kit into my clutch, bandage, ibuprofen, Tide pen like a private nurse for the evening. Sophie hires a guard to walk me from the stage exit to the car 2 blocks away. It's not dramatic, just sensible. No one needs an image of me pulled into a press scrum. We rehearse the tap and nod one more time, this time with a signal in case the mic goes dead. The stage manager will say the word projector into the mic and the room does something automatic, it hushes. That sound buys me 30 seconds of true silence if the technology fails or someone tries to interrupt. We practice the exit route more than the speech because the way I leave will matter as much as the way I arrive. I tape a single line inside my palm with Rachel's name and the first line of the speech, and when nerves make my hand cold, I know where to rest my thumb. Sophie writes a short public statement we can paste anywhere. I spoke about my experience. I will not discuss my family publicly. It's simple, not defensive. It rests in my pocket like an extra key. On the morning of the event, I sleep with my index card under my pillow and wake early with a mouth like sand. I move slowly through small rituals. The kettle whistles twice. I breathe in 4 counts and out 6. I button my dress from the inside out. Each small act is a map back to myself. The logistics and backups make the night less like walking into a trap and more like entering a room I chose. There isn't heroism in that. There's only careful preparation and the quiet courage to stand where you mean to stand. Table 1 is a blur of sequins and posture. People are turned toward the stage like a tide. I don't look directly at it. Looking means hunting for permission or an argument, and I don't need either. My hand compresses around the little card in my pocket like a small compass. The host's smile is the practiced thing that launches people into applause every year. He's already doing the tilt of his head that says, "This will be a night to remember." The microphone smells like metal and minutes, and when I touch it, the world concentrates into a small, reachable place. My pulse is a quiet drum, steady enough. I step into the light like I'm stepping into a room I chose. The host says my name and the room folds in on me. "Please welcome our surprise keynote debut novelist with a record-breaking deal," he says, and the phrasing is crisp and oddly kind. I step out and feel the lights warm my face. The first sound is a polite clap that reads the room and then gathers into something more. Mom chokes on her wine at table 1. I don't have to look to know where her hand is. It's by her throat, like she's trying to swallow a sentence that won't go down. Dad's phone is up before his face finishes being surprised. The little rectangle hums in his hand like proof he can hold. I put one hand on the mic and say my name the way it's always sounded in my head, belonging to me. The room hushes in a way that squeezes air out of a balloon. I start with the sentence that steadied me on nights when I wasn't sure. A long time ago, someone I loved dropped my pages in a trash bin and told me nobody wanted them. The fork against a plate stops. The line is plain, there's no flourish. I let the silence breathe for a heartbeat and then go on. I talk about what support is when it's true help that asks nothing in return and what it isn't. Help that counts favors like receipts and expects obedience in exchange. I say I left with one suitcase and a determination to write without permission. I describe the bookstore where I learned to listen and the bathroom where I typed because the fan masked my fear. I don't name anyone. I don't want to drag private rooms into the light. I want to make a clean line. In the middle, I offer the sentence I wrote for Rachel but don't speak her name aloud. Some of us were raised to fold. We can learn to unfold. It's soft and meant only for the person sitting 3 rows back wearing a dress that always shrank in her presence. I pivot to readers, people who felt small at other dinner tables, and tell them that's who I wrote for. I keep the language crisp and simple. I avoid the roar of accusation because the point isn't to hurt people, it's to make space. When I reach the close, I make it plain and short because short sentences travel faster and have less room to be misunderstood. If you're listening and you feel small at the dinner table, I tell the room, you are not small to me. The room shifts. I finish with a line I practiced until the words stopped feeling borrowed. I love my family. I do not belong to them. I don't bow. I step back from the mic the way you step away from something that used to have a hold on you. The reaction is real-time weather. There are gasps like pages turning, a smattering of nervous laughter, and then a slow applause that moves from polite to steady. Mom's smile tightens into something thin and deliberate. She looks away from me and toward the stage, lights like a person who'd rather reinterpret the map than read it. Dad keeps filming, fingers steady on the phone. He doesn't get to tell the story anymore, but he tries, like reflex. Rachel bites her lip and then sits straighter. She doesn't cry. I watch her shoulders lift in a way that makes something inside me unclench. People near the stage lean forward, the kind of attention that means the night will carry my words into headlines. Priya taps my shoulder and gives me the nod we rehearsed, the cue that means finish and go. Sophie is at the wing with her hand like a fist of water, smiling in a way that says, this is the exact moment. My phone buzzes once in my bag. I don't check it. Nora's text lights up the screen later, proud. Maya's comes in. We walk tomorrow. The applause carries me off stage and the guard walks me to the car 2 blocks away like a person escorting a thing that matters. Backstage, Jason whispers, that landed clean, and it feels like someone handing me a towel after a swim. I drink water that tastes like backstage and paper and the night. Sophie squeezes my hand as if passing steady heat into me. The scheduled press line hits the wire at the exact pause we planned, and my phone starts to pulse with incoming messages, some kind, some furious, some simple and stunned. I let it ring. For the first time in a long time, the room I feared becomes a place I left on my own terms. The stage didn't rescue me from my past, but it let me set the boundary I'd been learning to say aloud. As the city whistles outside and the car pulls away, I feel the gravity of the night settle around me like a coat I chose to wear. The car pulled away and the lobby's glass doors slid shut behind us. For a moment, I let myself imagine the night as a rectangle we had made together. The speech, the line, the exit. The plan had worked. That feeling, success damped with an ache, settled in my chest like a small stone. I told myself to breathe. I kept my hand over the index card in my pocket until I could feel the letters through the paper and remind myself the words still belonged to me. I slept poorly and woke to a phone that had been busy while I was in the dark, 42 voicemails. I stared at the number on the screen like it was a code I needed to crack and then opened the first message because that's the way habit works, start at the top. Mom's voice filled the room on the first voicemail. At first it was a jagged, angry message, how could you do this? Then, 30 seconds later, a softer one that sounded rehearsed. I always believed in you, like saying it could rewrite the whole of it. Her moods swung like an old metronome. Dad left 5 messages in a row, each one a different flavor. One somber and full of nostalgia, remembering the night she first read my infant poems. Another practical and flat, listing the ways they'd supported me and hinting that a conversation was owed. Aunties and cousins left the usual mix, pleased to keep the family private, offers to immediate, warnings about reputation. Some family friends, the ones who'd once clapped at recitals and openings, left voice notes that wavered between proud and whispered advice not to burn any bridges. I didn't listen to them all through. My thumb flicked and paused on a few and then moved on. I kept a shorthand in my head. Mom, rage, then revisionism. Dad, finance speak and nostalgia. Aunts and cousins, guilt and caution. 2 old friends, proud of you, just don't use my name. Someone left a nearly cheerful message about keeping the family whole. It all felt like weather, shifting winds, no one stopping long enough to ask how I felt. I saved them all in a folder I named Weather, a small joke at my own expense, and I didn't call anyone back. The damage control started before I'd had coffee. Mom had already been working her contacts, calling people who run the rooms she moves in and changing the story with the same confident tone she used to edit my sentences. She'd been painting me as misled by handlers or hurt but talented, phrases that shift blame onto the people who helped me and away from the people who had tried to own me. Jason texted me a line as soon as he saw my face on the video feed. "She's working the phones, don't engage." The whisper campaign worried at me. It felt like someone trying to reroute the narrative while it was still fresh. Sophie drafted a short statement we could send to any call that asked for a reaction. I spoke about my experience. "I won't discuss my family publicly." Short, plain, not a surrender. A handful of industry contacts called or texted with versions of the same concern. Some were polite, others curious, all of them wanting a version that kept business clean. People who once nodded at mom in boardrooms were suddenly participants in a story she was telling about a daughter who'd gotten swept up by a whirlwind. The pushback didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like a pressure in the room that made the air harder to breathe. Sophie told me to let her handle it. "You gave your words," she said. "We'll give the rest bird feed. It'll die out." There was comfort in that, someone else turning their hands to the mess I'd made by opening my mouth. Dad's response wasn't only in voicemails. He sent an email with a subject line that read like an agenda: "Family meeting tonight. We need to discuss." Inside, he'd bullet-pointed expenses from past years like a ledger: classes, rent, a line for networking opportunities. The tone was clipped and businesslike, the kind of language he used when he wanted to make a point without shouting. He suggested a time and a public place, but the real thing beneath it wasn't a meeting. It felt like an attempt to reassert ownership, almost a gentle claim that he still got to add notes to my life. I didn't open it in full at first. I forwarded the email to a folder I called Strings and left it there like a letter you don't want to burn but can't file away. I called Maya instead, just to hear a voice that wasn't connected to the family echo chamber. She said what I already knew in a tone designed to be honest and kind. "I'm not obligated to such a meeting. You're allowed to be done," she said. The words landed like a small, rare gift. I wrote a sentence on a scrap of paper, big black letters so I could hold it up to myself. "I am not a ledger." Then I folded the scrap and put it in my pocket and went for a run, letting the pavement take the rest of my anger out of my legs. Movement makes decisions feel less heavy. It clears the noise. My team set a new constraint for the week that felt like both a net and a relief. Nora warned me not to escalate with specifics. She used the word protect more than once when she talked about the book. "Keep your language clean," she said. "Don't name names. Keep it general so the book isn't the story." Sophie added a hard boundary. No live television with hosts who liked confrontations, no reaction segments where someone's anger could be turned into a 3-minute viral moment. Instead, we scheduled one long-form interview for next week, a calm studio with a host who respects quiet conversations and won't bait someone into shouting. We also wrote a single, short post for my author page to remind readers of my message and reinforce the boundary: "I love my family. I will not discuss them publicly." We pre-scheduled that post and I turned off Wi-Fi for the day to write literal disconnections so my head wouldn't ping with lines and pleas. The constraint felt good in my bones. There was a clarity that I hadn't had when I was trying to answer every shove and post. Less was a relief. I texted Rachel, "I'm here, doors open, no pressure." She replied with a green heart and a short thank you. It felt like a small covenant between us. The new constraint from my team wasn't about hiding, it was about focus. If I got pulled into a family drama that used my book as a stage, the book would suffer and so would the readers who had trusted me to tell them a story. So we chose the readers. The day stretched and I let the team take the heat. I answered a few notes, short, careful, practicing the voice I'd used on stage, calm and clean. I wrote out of habit and hunger and the pages settled me. Friends called to say they were proud. People I hadn't heard from in years left texts that were simple and solid. The noise from the house was loudest in my head until I put it in folders and ran until my legs hurt. The rest of the world did its slow, human thing. Someone offered advice, someone else offered a shoulder, and somewhere in the city people went on with their lives. I made coffee, read through the pages I'd edited with Nora the night before, and underlined a sentence that had felt true the whole time. The constraint didn't feel like a jail sentence. It felt like giving my work the oxygen it needed and letting the rest of it weather into whatever it would weather into without me feeding it. She tries every angle. First it's flattery, your speech was brave, but you know how these things land. Then it's fear, you're burning bridges you'll need someday. Then she leans into nostalgia, naming family stories like charms you're supposed to clutch. I keep both hands on my bag strap because the small metal clasp gives my fingers something steady to do. The front desk man drifts near like a referee, which is exactly what I asked for when I texted him earlier. Keeping the conversation in public was deliberate. It's a buffer against being pulled into a private room where sentences can be rewritten. She asks for an apology for optics, and I have the odd urge to correct her grammar. I'm not in optics, I say, and my voice is low and even. The words land like a small stone. She cycles quicker, moving from a plea to a gentle rebuke and then to a warning. I listen for a full 5 minutes and time it in my head. When she pauses for breath, I fold my hands and say, I appreciate your concern, Aunt Marlene. I need to get going. Leaving feels like a tiny, necessary revolt. I step away politely, keeping my pace measured, and the door swings closed behind me with the small, satisfying click of an ordinary life continuing. The ambush didn't land because I refused to step into the room she'd already set. At home, Rachel's messages come like small transmissions from a place under siege. She texts from the kitchen between loads of laundry, Mom took my car keys for safety and set a curfew. The words are clipped and small. Dad wants her to draft talking points for school, a list of approved answers if anyone asks, and he suggests she rehearse them in case someone quizzes her on family matters. The idea of a teenage daughter memorizing lines to protect adult reputations makes me want to scream and then want to hold her at the same time. She sounds smaller than she is. Every sentence seems to have been punched down to save energy for compliance. I tell her again, firmly and tenderly, pack a bag for a week. The spare room is yours whenever you want it, no questions asked. She replies with a green heart and a trembling, okay. Later she texts that Dad has installed a curfew on the house alarm and that Mom has been practicing her lines for friends who call. She says she feels watched, like someone is stepping on the edges of her life to make sure she stays contained. I remind her the spare room has snacks and a lamp that doesn't flicker and a blanket that smells like nothing familiar enough to be a trap. She writes, this weekend, and I answer, yes, I'll pick you up when you text the skull. We both laugh through a sob, and the tiny laugh makes something steady between us. She packs in a way that betrays the tremor, books first, then clothes she can fold into a small case. When she closes her door, I feel the distance and the beginning of something safer. The media noise comes next like a sudden rain. A morning show calls offering a reconciliation segment that smells of bad TV. A podcast requests an immediate reaction episode with hosts who like a fight. A glossy that once promised a cover now asks if Mom will join me on camera. Sophie triages like a surgeon, cutting off what will make mud and saving what will let us breathe. She says no to live TV that would put me in a room designed to pit people against one another. Instead, she books a long-form interview for next week with a host who reads and asks questions like someone who wants to understand craft, not headlines. Maya moves resources to longer reviews and newsletters, places where words have a chance to sit and breathe. I let Sophie handle the outreach and the refusals. It feels strange to say no to attention, but the kind of attention that wants to trap feelings in 15-second clips isn't the kind that helps a book or a person. Instead, we prepare one deep conversation where I can talk about the work without the room lurching toward family drama. Sophie's voice on my phone when she explains it is quiet and decisive. We move at reader speed, not gossip speed. That line becomes a chorus I repeat when temptation to respond pings across my screen. In some ways, controlling the narrative means declining parts of it, especially the parts designed to make people watch two strangers fight on camera. Then an old email surfaces from months earlier, the one where I asked Mom for space and tried to explain how important it was that I be allowed to grow without her edits. The leak had a sneaky purpose. Someone wanted to paint me as ungrateful, but the content was not scandalous. It was careful and clear. People pick it apart, and to my surprise, many readers share it with comments like, "This is how you set a boundary." The leak backfires on the leaker in a lovely way. What was meant to shame me becomes an instruction manual for anyone trying to separate themselves from strings. The internet's weird alchemy turns a private plea into a public tool. Dad answers with a long email that lists conditions to reconcile, phrases that feel like ultimatums dressed as concern. I don't open it at first. The temptation to write back with everything I feel is fierce, but I forward it to a folder called Strings and let someone else carry the weight for a minute. Instead, I order pizza and seltzer for the move I'm planning with Rachel, setting a small dinner for the night we intend to move her bag into the spare room, normal things that feel like anchors. I make the bed, lay out a towel, and put a note on the pillow that says, "Welcome home, only if you want." That small choice, furnishing a room out of love and not obligation, feels like the truest answer I can give. A message buzzes on my phone from Mom offering a private meeting. Just us. No recording, no public recap. I always believed, she writes, as if repeating the phrase could make it true. The words smell sweet and dangerous at once. The offer is framed so carefully, no recording, that my ears prick. It feels like the old living room where things were explained away, where sentences could be softened into a new shape that suited them. I think about replying yes in a public place for a quick talk, the way people sometimes do when they intend to make a performance of reconciliation in a cafe under the hum of ordinary strangers. Henry's voice is a steady old thing in my head. Does this serve the work? The question is practical and cold. It forces me to see the offer for what it might be, a room where old rules are reinstalled. I save her message to the folder I call Weather, a place that keeps storms in order, and then I block the number. Blocking is a small, gentle violence, but it's necessary. Silence will be my answer because silence keeps the boundary where words once didn't. It says more than any sentence she might write in the polite language she uses to remake the past. After I block the number, my hands tremble a little and then settle. The choice feels final in a way that isn't dramatic, it's just quiet and true. I tell myself that blocking is not cruel, it's a tool. It protects the work, the readers, and the sister I plan to bring home. I make coffee and sit at my desk with a clean page and the odd, steady feeling of someone who has closed a door and is now deciding which windows to open. I sat with the phone in my lap for a long time, feeling the familiar friction of decisions that matter. The urge to answer was immediate, 5 imagined replies ready to go, sharp and exact. I could write him a list of the nights I slept on a borrowed couch because I chose work over comfort. I could call him every receipt of emotional cost he'd demanded. I could tell him, simply, "You don't own me." But most of those responses would make the scene louder, would hand him the exact public argument he wanted, and would put Rachel back in the middle of a family show that she didn't sign up for. So I didn't reply. Instead, I screenshot the message and saved it into a folder I'll admit I labeled Strings because that was the truth. His messages always came with strings. I called Maya, needing a voice that wasn't threaded into my childhood. She listened without interrupting, then said something I needed to hear. "You don't owe him an apology, you owe him a life of your own." The sentence felt like a small clearing. I typed 3 words into a note on my phone and read them until they settled. "You are allowed to be done." That permission, spoken by someone else, was the weight that finally balanced the scale in my chest. I told myself out loud, ridiculous as it sounded, "You don't owe a stage to anyone who didn't give you a voice." Saying it moved something in me. I made a plan instead of a reply. I picked up keys, booked a small moving van for Saturday morning, and started writing a list of things Rachel would need that didn't include anyone else's approval. The act of planning was an antidote to the pressure. It shifted my energy from argument to construction. I called Rachel and tried to keep my voice steady. "Pack a bag for a week," I told her. "If you want to go back after, you can. If you want to stay, you stay." Her silence was a held breath and then a small laugh that was mostly relief. "I'm coming," she said. The word landed like a small, sure promise. We made the practical plans: what time I'd be there, which door she'd use, how she'd text me if someone tried to stop her. She asked, quietly, "What if Dad makes it worse?" I told her, "Then we make it less worse together. We'll get you out and away until you feel safe." Booking the truck felt oddly holy. I chose a small, sensible van and reserved 2 hours in the morning so we wouldn't be tempted to make a dramatic escape. I emailed my landlord to add Rachel's name to the intercom list and printed a spare key. I bought 2 extra light bulbs for the spare room and a new pillowcase because some small comforts feel like promises you can keep. The list of purchases: blankets, a small lamp, a shower curtain, was banal and life-affirming. Each thing I clicked buy on was an act of claiming a small, ordinary future. I texted Sophie, "Family may escalate. I'm moving Rachel this weekend." Her reply was immediate and steady: "We escalate kindness. I have your back." That line felt like armor. If Dad wanted to hold a meeting at a club and talk about receipts, we would not attend. If Mom wanted a private conversation, she would have to make it in public terms. I wasn't interested in bargaining for a composure that had been bought with conditions. What I wanted was a house that didn't come with a bill attached. The plan to move Rachel wasn't a punt, it was a boundary with boxes. Moving day was a small, luminous relief. We pulled a U-Haul up 2 blocks away and carried boxes ourselves: her textbooks, a chipped mug, the stack of novels she loved, the small framed photo of us at the county fair with our faces full of gummy smiles. She trembled at the door, fingers skittish as she turned the latch, then laughed at the clunk when the lock clicked, and the sound told her something had changed. We ate pizza on the floor of the new room because it's the only furniture you need to start a life: cardboard boxes and slices and cheap paper plates. She unpacked slowly, treating each small thing like an exercise in reclaiming space. We made a list: duplicate keys, a grocery run, a night light for the bathroom. She put a framed picture of the 2 of us as kids on the dresser and said, "This is ours now." I felt ridiculous gratitude for the small domestic rituals: buying a second toaster, figuring out where the broom went. She left a note on her old pillow in the house we'd left behind: "I'm safe. I'll call when I can. Please don't come here." The note was both a request and a weapon against the future intrusion. We agreed on rules: no poking through each other's things, no gossip about what happened before unless she wants to talk, chores shared because living together shouldn't feel like a debt. A week later, things had settled into a steady that felt real. I had a long-form interview that went deep into craft instead of airing our family laundry, and it felt like an exhale. Nora and I cut 2 paragraphs from chapter 3. The scene breathed better and I felt less defensive. Henry sent a text that said simply, "Keep going," and that felt like a benediction. The pre-order bumped and people began posting photos of their own sticky notes, tiny boundaries they'd written and stuck to their fridges. The idea that my words had sparked other people's small acts of courage was the strangest kind of reward. Readers began emailing with gratitude, and their notes were sweet and steady. "Your line about support wasn't mine, but it felt like it," one wrote. My inbox filled with people telling stories of their own kitchen bins and suitcases, and there was a quiet sense of community that didn't look for viral points. My team remained protective and smart. Sophie scheduled a couple of safe appearances and held the rest back, like preserving the best fruit for a later table. Maya lined up interviews with thoughtful reviewers rather than tabloid hosts. I wrote in the mornings and went to bed early. Rachel cooked dinner twice a week and insisted I try the recipes she'd learned online. We talked about which parts of the house we wanted to make ours and which we'd leave to grow into something else. On my desk sits a planter made from a small metal bin I found at a thrift store. Inside, a green plant refuses to wilt. Next to it, a clean stack of pages sits clipped together with a blue clip. On the top sheet, my name is in the header and nothing else, no red pen marks, no dedications prefabricated by someone else's guilt. My phone is face down more often than not, do not disturb is on. There's one voicemail saved, unread, because some messages deserve the dignity of not being engaged. I light a candle most nights now, a small ritual that makes the air smell like coffee and basil and the possibility of tomorrow. I open my pages and read my own words aloud, and the sound of my voice in the room is nothing like the old house's tone of approval. It's free and quiet and mine. If you felt like you were raised to shrink for someone else's comfort, tell me about it in the comments. Subscribe, hit the bell, and keep listening. There are more true stories here that know how to set a boundary and keep a life.